ladies and gentlemen, the worst episode of the season. And no, I will not take that back. Unsurprisingly, it is once more a Mayuri Sekijima episode, and it's for the same reason most of Mayuri Sekijima's episodes are awful. Their poor treatment of the cast in order to drive people into being idiots to play part in an idiot plot. It's not even been 6 months, and that's not even bringing sliding timescale into this. Either you acknowledge them growing up, maturing, and getting responsible or smarter if time is passing like that, or you have to bubble the show in a non-specific period of time. You cannot leave a character stagnant and unchanging in spite of the experiences that promote them to grow, or force them to revert to something they've clearly shown themselves to not be if you're acknowledging a significant passage of time is happening. And here's immediately why this episode is awful. It's rewriting the past on a lot of the nonsense of the previous Commander Beef subplot, with the net agents returning to the region from activities abroad, and Sekijima once more turning Neto into a thoughtless idiot to facilitate the plot around their return. Literally 70 episodes ago, he was going out of his way to prove that fact to you because you didn't believe him! Again, I know it's been a constant complaint I've railed on in the Axess videos, and I know you're all sick of it by this point, but Sekijima's faction of the writing staff do undermine every element of the stories they try to do when they pull this shit. As if they figured out on their own, they then owed Neto a "you were right" acknowledgement, as he was the one who first brought it up, and it was everyone else around him that told him he was wrong. And Miyuki went out of her fucking way to disguise herself as Mesa to pull a "can't be at two places at once" gambit for them to belittle Neto for that belief previously. You can't pull a "we've known all along it was only you who didn't" gambit for these circumstances without it then assassinating the entire cast for it, as Neto was the one that was right before about it when you all insulted him for saying it. Again, you can't have it both ways. Either you have to treat Neto as being right with an "I told you so" and everything, and you all owe him an apology for berating him into believing it to not being the case, or they have to be just surprised by this revelation, and Neto still has to be treated as in the right. Any other way just makes them all look like assholes for deliberately telling him it's not, while actually knowing Mesa is and was. This is especially egregious, as Sekijima alone has been responsible for this insipid subplot throughout the series. For them to then renege on this element of it when the entire beef bullcrap kept the characters from a mutually respectful bond, it is an entirely new tier of insult for the cast. Hell, Mail in this scene, for their justification on how they figured it out, uses the same logic Neto did 70 episodes ago to out all their identities, as Neto tried to before. This is how bad Sekijima's gotten at this point, just to provide an excuse to bash Neto's character, making him the one in the wrong in any scenario regardless of circumstance, even if previously all evidence in the show should present him as being the one in the right. How does this not make everyone look bad as consequence by them all playing part in enforcing the lie and insulting him for buying into the lie they helped to spread, as they are retconned to have been doing now? You know, I'd like to think that this shit is why Sekijima has not been seen writing anything in years. The last writing credit I have for them was the series Taboo Tattoo, which was awful primarily because Sekijima's scripts for the series gutted what was there for a story. There were a lot of complaints about his adaptation, which did not help the animation company JC staff's reputation as yet another botched adaptation to go alongside Tsukihime, One Punch Man Season 2, A Certain Magical Index Season 3, and Slayer's Revolution R, among others. To push bash the stupid, because it infests everything about this episode, and the episode literally spends the majority of its length pulling even more of this shit, so I'm not even going to bother talking about literally every second about how bad it gets, as it's a concentration of every comedy gimmick that was excised, and with good reason, from most of Axess, and the show would evolve beyond needing part of it. With it all tied to trying to keep Mesa's secret identity as a net agent under wraps from, of all people, Mariko. Because of course, that old bit of unnecessary nonsense was really needed. When that double identity thing in the first place was done at Mesa's insistence, and not required to keep their job, as is suddenly insisted upon here. But really, if I did list off every single thing wrong or of irritants here, you'd all get sick of me saying the same thing over and over and over and over again in a single video about it, because it's the same fuck-ups I've just described throughout it, or cited as problems with Sekijima before, and the Commander Beef subplot as a whole, and that it's worthless and they make the worst excuses of trying to justify it. And I think I've beaten the dead horse that is half of the writing staff treating Neto as brain dead too much as it is. The comedy bits drawn throughout are painfully bad, ranging from revival of the stupid love triangle, the kids thinking Mesa's going to out himself to Mariko finally as he should have dispensed with the secret ID thing back before the show hit the 20s, as it was that fucking worthless, to a whole slew of mistaken identity gags, with of course everyone being an idiot. Regardless, the net agents are back because they've been trailing Goss Magnets, who somehow escaped custody in the aftermath of everything related to Gospel. Goss, in his own attempt to bring the organization back, is trying to meet with Yuriko to get his hands on dark chip supplies, but due to their resemblance, mistakes Mariko for Yuriko while Mesa is out with her, while Mesa almost does the same with Yuriko. Now the thing is, I could believe Goss mistaking Mariko for Yuriko as he's trying to make contact covertly, but the continued insistence after she denies it, and not just this being a mistaken identity case? Sorry, no. Goss is a goofball, but the series has shown he's not a complete imbecile. But again, that's the default for Sekijima. Everyone is an idiot. Except for some reason Mesa in this episode. Hell, for the most part, thanks to the series segmenting all competence of the character to his Commander Beef identity, Mesa actually feels completely out of character here, which wouldn't have happened if they had actually reconciled and edited this unnecessary plot 70 episodes ago. Thus, Mesa has to rescue Mariko from a gun-toting Goss, which is sort of a dilemma for the watching Yuriko. After all, that's her sister right there, and she's just going to let Goss murder her without doing anything? Oh wait, right, this episode is literally that inept that such did not even enter the scriptwriter's mind, and it wouldn't even be character derailment for her with what we see of her later when we actually get an episode about her backstory where Nebula orders her to do it. And she can't. If it weren't for the fact that she's there at that moment. Were she not in the scene at all, or just waiting back at their meeting point assuming Goss is just late and not here as well, then this would be more justifiable. But again, that's not the case. She was just going to watch as her sister died here in a circumstance she could have prevented just by revealing her presence as she was supposed to anyways, but took no action. This is why I hate this episode. Regardless, Goss is confronted, and he suddenly reveals he's in that drag costume from the costume party episode. Oh, and get used to that being another Sekijima running gag for Goss. They love putting him in that dress. And while Rockman and Sharkman are busy dealing with Magnet Man, Goss reveals to his audience, gasp! Commander Beef is Mesa! Again, originally he put on the costume, not to act covertly, but to hide his identity from the kids. His job doesn't require him to do it. He did it himself, and the disguise actively hinders his own efforts. Enforcing the costume and the ID for stupid reasons, including leaving them at a disadvantage when their lives and the lives of actual civilians like Mariko are in danger, is a criminal dereliction of duty and the responsibilities of one's job. No one comes out of this mess unscathed. And what saves them from this? Everyone suddenly dressing up like Commander Beef! Good question! With that mass series of attacks, Goss is defeated and finally arrested, and Mesa, I don't think ever appears again, or at least not that I remember. And as much as I wish this entire subplot had been dealt with far differently, good riddance that it's finally fucking gone. The wrap-up. We have character mass assassination for literally every cast member that appears here. We have idiot plot, as my god is this one. If it's not a textbook example of one, it's damn close. We have the Returner, for a character coming back out of nowhere that wasn't needed back. Admittedly, we did need Saloma back at some point to give up Wood Soul, but that's not happening yet. And we have, but I'm a vegetarian. To my actual, real-life dislike of beef and most meats is I can't stand the taste or texture of the grand majority of them. But yes, as this is another episode that bashes Neto for literally no justifiable reason, it by default makes this a bad episode. Why it's worse this time is because it ignores everything that's happened previously yet again, and in ways that makes everyone awful to a more egregious degree than any before it. As it's been a long time since I've watched Stream, I don't remember off the top of my head if there's any worse ones there. Sekijima wrote 9 episodes of Stream's run, just under a fifth of that season. But this one is easily in the bottom 5 for the entire run of the series, just for how insulting this part of it is. I actually ended up losing all my copies of Axess's dub episodes in a hard drive failure in 2022, so I could not check the dub to confirm this, but I swear I remember the dub trying to fix this in the script localization by admitting Lan was right about this mess to try and salvage the episode. If they didn't, that's my memory playing tricks on me, but if they did, well, that's them paying more attention to what was written than Sekijima ever seemed to bother to throughout their career. It's sad to think that the legitimately best episode of their entire career ended up in a series where the creative staff refused to put up with their bullshit. Wait, no, that's not sad. That's holding someone accountable for their conduct lest they be fired, which really is what should have been done here. But here's the truly insulting thing about all of this, though. It's a story arc episode. Yeah, Gauss Magnets being caught and jailed is a plot point that ends up being brought up to start a storyline in Rockman's stream. Well, one could assume he was caught post-gospel, and they only needed to address him when his daughter Tesla was brought into the picture, and I'd honestly prefer to think so with it. No, he's put on trial openly, and Tesla has to break him out. That's how she's introduced. And subsequently starts Strain's incarnation of Neo World 3, that ends up going nowhere, only later feeding into the dark Rockman subplot later on, that Sekijima also screwed with. Admittedly, once more, it's been years since I've watched those episodes of Stream, and I've not gotten around to rewatching them to write the reviews of their story yet. So my memory's probably a bit lacking, but I swear Sekijima must have gotten told off about how bad this was, as I do not remember if any of the following episodes gets anywhere near as bad as this. Or they might have finally gotten told off about how badly they were treating the cast. As this is a mess that should not have happened, and has no right to be here like this. With the strides the show did make to become far better, and bear much greater expectations than what is apparent here.